Join me, Mark Windows, for Windows on the World live every Sunday 9 to 11 PM GMT. Check out our archive and programme stream at windowsontheworld.net.
Hello everybody, welcome to Windows on the World. Got a very interesting show for you tonight. Smart drones of the new Utopia. But first, a little report on our talk yesterday at the Ark, the cafe in Bristol, 27 Broad Street, which is actually also Palestinian Museum. And we had a very good day down there. And we had a good audience. The only real problem was parking.
It was, wasn't it? Oh,
yeah, Sandy Adams is with me, and we were there yesterday with Piers Corbyn. And yes, we had to go to this multi-storey car park, and I managed to find one space on the very top floor. So this is the future. This is the drive towards making us carless. Yes, Bristol is a future smart city. It is a smart city, isn't it?
It is, yeah. The flagship smart city of Europe, actually. Mark?
Yes, this is what I hear. And yes.
And they will be banning diesel cars next year. Not next year, the year after, 2021, yeah.
Completely ban diesel?
Completely, yeah.
Right, yeah. Well, that's the title of tonight's show, Smart Drones of the New Utopia. We'll get into that very soon. But I'd just like to let you know that I've set up a Patreon account and I'm going to be putting up some really interesting stuff up there for patrons of Windows on the World. And I'm going to make an announcement next week about a new project which I want a lot of people to get involved with. So that's next Sunday. I'll be talking about that. But do check out the Patreon. I've got a link on windowsontheworld.net. And next week, 24th of November, we should be in Aberdeen at the Baden-Powell Community Centre in Turriff. Check out the Eventbrite bookings page. If you're up in Scotland, do come along and do let other people know because we need to get a few more people in for that. And we're hoping to do a few more up there, if not this time, in the near future. Saturday, 30th of November, the bigger picture hits Colchester. That's 1:30 PM till 7 PM. £10 in advance, which is on Eventbrite on windowsontheworld.net, or £12 on the door. And it's at Tollgate Hall, behind the Stanway Community Centre, Villa Road, Colchester, CO2 then, C030RH, and there's an Eventbrite bookings page for that one. Saturday 14th of December, 11 till 6 PM, the bigger picture is at the Steiner Academy in Hereford, HR28DL, the postcode, £10 on the door, and you can contact an email for that, biggerpicturehereford, all one, biggerpicturehereford@gmail.com. And there's a mobile number at windowsontheworld.net if you want to find out any more about that. And if you'd like to book one of our talks, please get in touch through the website. So we've got quite an interesting show for you tonight, as usual. I'm going to start off with a little bit of exposition. Brave New World was a dystopian novel written in 1931 by Aldous Huxley. It told of a futuristic world state of genetically modified citizens and an intelligence-based social hierarchy. The novel anticipated huge scientific developments in reproductive technology, sleep learning, psychological manipulation, and classical conditioning that are combined to make a utopian society that goes unchallenged only by a single outsider. So we're going to be challenging the Utopia tonight. Well, there's two of us actually. There's two outsiders here. We're going to challenge the narrow corridor of accepted opinion. But getting back to Huxley, followed up Brave New World with a reassessment in an essay, Brave New World Revisited, in 1958, and with Island 1962. That was his final novel, called Island. Island as in an island, not Ireland, the country. Now, the teething troubles of the drones in Brave New World have now been worked out by the social engineers. Well, That was in 1960, wasn't it? And the new system is being rolled out. This is the new system we talk about in our shows and in our talks. So in this new dystopia, this new utopia, there's no need for great thinkers, just cogs in the wheel for administrators of the system. That's all that's needed. Everybody needs to become part of a hive mind. The world is being run as a farm and also, of course, a corporation. There's no need for creativity, just mediocrity and standardised modes of intelligence where nothing is exceptional as it's not necessary in these lower echelons of society where we have the norms and the drones. Now, we've talked about the hive mind and this accepted corridor of opinion many times before, and that the education system works to produce compliant but useful tools of the state. Now, the new system, where different moods and opinions appear to be catered for, but only within tightly prescribed parameters. This is basically what this new system is about. This is our new democracy, communitarian open society, the one our so-called government has handed over to the likes of George Soros, with this new organisation called Involve, who are going to be rolling out your citizens' assemblies. Yes, your citizens' assemblies are being funded by the open society. So that's a bit of a giveaway as to where we are in the post-truth and post-democratic world. So yes, let's take a look at this now. In effect, the problem with a system where choices appear to be given is that movements and ideas will spring forth in an unpredictable way. So we can't have that. Now, this problem has now been solved. The need for rebellion is catered for by the state, as in Extinction Rebellion. This is a globalist-backed anti-globalist group. The state facilitates the protests, which are organised by their agents, those psychologically trained into the necessary ideologies. And as we know, and as we've said before on this show, the purpose of education is indoctrination into an already existing system which relies on compliance and the ability of the state to supply the citizen with work, distraction, and a healthy dose of fear to stop dissent. This produces willingness to pay tax and accept the imposed restrictive reality. The nation of workers who will not ask important questions because they don't know the questions to ask. This is also the illusion of freedom of choice, which is restricted without the knowledge of the indoctrinated. So in other words, people do not want a bigger choice if they are given limited choices and they don't believe there's a choice outside the limited choices. This is also called the common good. The term has been used a lot in the new system, which is now in place. So in the post-truth world, there is a world of beliefs and emotions, a world which depends on the limitation of knowledge and fact, a world where the group is everything and the feelings of the group are the distraction from facts. The facts which could get in the way of the control mechanisms put in place through psychological control, political correctness, and a cult of hurt feelings and fake empowerment. We hear that word a lot, don't we? Empowerment, empowering the citizens. Well, the citizens are being empowered into the hive mind. So it's not empowerment, but this is the post-truth world and words are meaningless. The new diversity is that which can be used and absorbed by the administration. So the purpose of secondary education is to direct and prevent change in the individual. This was stated in 1918 in the Carnegie-funded Principles of Secondary Education by Alexander Inglis. We did a show on this. It's called Education Equals Indoctrination, all about the modern day education system in the 1900s onwards. Now, all of this, of course, is for the common good, the need to prevent change and offer limited choices. So the common good is actually the end of strife, the end of struggle, the end of philosophy, thought, action, and integrity, the end of purpose, other than that of a communal feel-good factor induced for the benefit of the new communitarian model citizen. This is the painless concentration camp talked about by Aldous Huxley. The social engineers were all working for the common good, where the group would be one hive mind. The drones of Brave New World needed to progress into a new reality. This was the purpose of the Big Society, which came in 2010 in this country. Of course, it was announced in the same year by Obama in America. And of course, its agents of change are now in every part of public office. This is a mentoring program to get everybody into the hive mind. In other words, there is nothing outside this corridor of opinion. They train these drones through the public and private sector, and they are imposing the new reality where there is one choice, which is actually no choice. But have you heard of the new utopia? Well, let's get into this first as to what utopia means. A utopia is an imagined community or society that possesses highly desirable or nearly perfect qualities for its citizens. The opposite of a utopia is a dystopia. So here is we get the blending of the two. The real dystopia will become, on the surface, a utopia. The reality behind the new governance is dystopia, and the superficiality of the new normal is the utopia. Having covered the new governance system now being rolled out as citizens' assemblies, coming to a town, city or village near you, using psychological manipulation rolled out as participation, the same template is rolled out at every opportunity where there is public participation. Doesn't matter whether it's a council meeting or whether it's your local protest group. The same system is being put into every part of public participation. It does not matter at all what type of participation it is. And that's the key to understanding this new form of society, the new form of society that's been propagated by social engineers and the likes of George Soros. There's an illusion of participation using trained facilitators who appear to record the input of a group. There are limited options given which lead to the intended outcome. All contrary opinions are stifled or marginalised. Anything recorded or minuted is forgotten about. Anything outside the collective hive mind of the intended outcome is left out, forgotten, marginalised, criticised or ostracised. There is one choice, no choice. That's where we are. That's the actual new meaning of society. This is being rolled out for the future leaders. In reality, the chosen compliant drones who are the administrators. And since 2011, at the start of the big society, it has been rolled out in schools. This is, of course, based on the old Soviet system where from birth to death, these ideals have to be implanted. The new utopia is a hive mind reality where the limited life experiences of the school indoctrinees are shared in groups. The emotions are manipulated into a group vision where all come together for the common good. There is no individual thought, just a collective shared experience where the group are only aware of their own limited selves, where aspirations are limited and all risks are perceived as a shared experience. The collective hive mind is all, there is nothing outside. The school programs rolled out since communitarianism from 2011 include Humanitopia. Has anyone heard of this out there? Humanitopia appears to be training the facilitators and administrators of the new open society type of social engineering in secondary schools, the type of post-truth world reality which focuses on the self only as part of the common good. The reliance on sharing emotions and forced bonding is all that seems apparent apart from these sort of repeated mantras of change. So we've got school children now, they are using the C word, change, this change that we are not told about. The change, though, is the usual repetition of the word without any concrete evidence of what the change being referred to actually is. That's the main point here. So, I've just got some information here from Sandy, who's turning her phone off and giggling in the background. See, it's all live,
it's
folks.
making funny noises. Hang on.
It's making funny noises.
Yeah, it keeps going.
Well, this is technology
deep.
for you.
Yeah. I've got
So, what we've got to talk about this week, after that rather kind of focused exposition at the beginning there, is this new organisation, newish organisation, which came out around 2011, started putting videos out on YouTube, and it's called Humanitopia. Sandy, how did you find out about this?
Well, a friend of mine from Devon sent me an email just recently, and her daughter brought home a letter from the school saying that they were having a one-day event at the school for her year, and it was called Utopia, And she did a little bit of research, and she actually didn't want her daughter to go, but her daughter wanted to go because all her friends were going. As it happened, her daughter ended up being sick that day, but obviously the parents got together. Some parents didn't get the letter because it got left in the school bag. So, really, a lot of these parents don't have any control over what is happening at their schools. And they decided to have this 1-day event, which then can turn into a 3-day event or a 5-day event, depending on how far the pupil wants to take it. And it ended up with one of the parents saying that at the end, her daughter recounted what happened, because the parents don't know what's happening at these events. That all the children in the class were crying because it obviously was a very, very emotional thing, because this is the whole idea, is to whip
what they do
emotion.
is they sort of share emotion, don't they? They have this sort of bonding. And all the way through the videos, it's cutting to their hands, which are all, they're also holding hands. They've crossed their arms and they're holding hands in these sort of trust exercises where they seem to be sort of sharing their very limited experiences. Right?
Yeah. And it's difficult because children at that age, the first module is actually, who am I? Well, that's a very good question for a teenager, because no teenager really knows who they are.
It's actually a profound question, which even the so-called yogis and gurus of the past have wrestled with. So to actually use this as a way of controlling people is quite interesting. It's in actual fact, all of this sort of mentoring using these new age concepts is a big part of this, but this one is just a basic psychological exercise in controlling the minds and creating these future drones and administrators. That's really all it is, isn't it?
Because all it is,
what it does is it takes away the need for exceptionalism, because they see themselves as heroes. And we're going to find out a bit more about that as we go along.
They call it the hero's journey.
First, let's get into who am I. Now, this is interesting. So this change is the one being enforced, the change which will be the embracing of the necessary ideologies of this new age of global governance. That's what it's all about. The beliefs repeated without the need for facts, without the need for analysis, just reliance on group consensus, because everything is being rolled out with group consensus. This is the new form of governance. Now, the programme starts with Who Am I? The 1-day course, it says here on their website, on the Humanitopia website, creates an unforgettable experience capable of reaching and, of course, empowering young people of all ages. Our annual social impact report demonstrates the powerful way in which this course consistently empowers young people. So empowering twice now, I've only second sentence in, empowers young people to take control of their life by making better choices. Many of our partners bring us back year after year to help their students grow personally and academically. Now, the course outcomes, let's see what they say. Our courses are aimed at improving the mental health and well-being of participants by empowering them to make positive changes in their life. We also hope to improve life chances by developing a range of life skills which will help individuals to become more employable. In other words, to become more compliant. So, who are you? Let's have a think about this. You are the sum of the limited experiences you have shared with the group. That's what this is all about, right? You have now exposed all your inner workings to the state apparatus and the group.
Yeah,
right.
You've made yourself quite vulnerable.
Yes.
Yeah.
So this is a form of sharing everything with society, basically. In other words, well, you've got nothing to hide, have you? Very old Soviet type technique. There is no more individual suffering. The group is your new home. Okay? So you all share your own limited emotions in a limited group. So in other words, there's nothing coming from outside this apart from the imposition of the change. So in other words, the group is vulnerable to change. Yeah? They are not in reality any use to you apart from talking about how you all feel and creating group narcissists. That's the point, right? Then you're now even easier to control because you've become vulnerable and everyone knows everything about you. So, the next part of this mentoring program is Be the Change, and it's called Heroes Training. Let's see what it says. At the end of a Who Am I Day, Our team will offer any audience from year 9 and above the opportunity to join our huge band of volunteers that we call heroes. Since 2004, we have encouraged and trained almost 20,000 young people to become positive role models for younger people. So what they're doing is they're training facilitators to facilitate the future facilitators. In other words, This is a closed program, right? It's a hive mind closed program.
Yeah. It is, and what's interesting is that they have these mantras that they keep saying. It's all about change and empowerment, but actually, they don't tell you what they're doing. There's nothing's being achieved other than empowerment and change. But change to what and empowerment for what? That's what my big question was.
Well, this is the question we ask when we look at all of this social engineering. It's all about change, but the change is never clearly defined, which is why it is a social engineering program, because what you do then is you inject the change. The change is the ideology, which is put into the hive mind. It's very, very simple. So you're creating a hive mind of individuals who have nothing outside the hive, and you're putting in the ideology into their minds. That's very, very simple programming.
But it's not clear from the website what the ideology is, and it's probably because they haven't actually injected it yet. That's my feeling.
Yes.
So it's waiting for something to be put in.
Yes.
They're creating the right conditions.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the current one would be the climate change agenda, which is about the new control mechanism that's coming in. And also it would be about this communitarianism, which actually seems to have disappeared, but in actual fact has become more imposed, because all the ideals of this, which were brought in under Cameron and Obama, the community organisers, the Saul Alinsky rules, all of this kind of stuff where change agents are mentored into society. Well, now we've got a mentoring programme, and it's school. So school is the mentoring programme for the change that is going to be imposed onto society by its own citizens. So it comes full circle, and there's no need for government anymore after that, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It says this 3-day course is a real catalyst for a paradigm-shifting positive cultural change within the school community and needs to be seen to be believed. So basically, after 3 days of holding hands with each other and being empowered with psychological conditioning, you become a hero.
Yeah.
Now, let's have a look at the definition of hero. A hero, according to the Cambridge Dictionary, is a person who is admired for having done something very brave or having achieved something great. So by definition, you can't have a whole group of heroes. It's impossible, right?
Well, unless they're very, very brave, all of them. But I can't see it in this. They're just literally mentored.
All they're doing is talking to each other about themselves, and then getting up and going, I feel better now I've talked about being bullied, or I feel better about this, or I feel better about that. But it's all about me. It's not about an achievement. There's no reference to achievement here. So in other words, there's no stretching of the boundaries. There's no group bonding through an experience, right?
Yeah,
I'm trying to look at this from a social engineering point of view.
Yeah.
Now, if you went into a situation where you wanted to train, say, people to be in the army.
Well, exactly.
Yeah?
I mean, when you
have a certain training program,
collective heroes could be a squadron or a or a battalion. They're heroes, but this cannot
potentially. But the point is that what you do is you train them in certain techniques, and it's a group of individuals who learn to work together. This seems to be more about a group that is trying to be individual. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
So in other words, the dynamic is the group, it's not the people. Yeah. So that's basically what it is. Now, nothing great has been achieved by being mentored psychologically into an interdependent group of people, right?
That's what it is,
yeah. This, though, is a useful interpretation if you want to make mediocrity sound exceptional, right? And I think this is very important because in the future, the idea of Brave New World is that everybody's dumbed down and basically doesn't question anything. In the original Brave New World, there was this kind of areas of conflict that were brought in between the different types of drones, okay? So, and they were all happy with a drug called Soma. Now,
right.
the need for the pharmaceutical element appears to be removed. In other words, the pharmaceutical element is the group. So the group then becomes the whole mind, and there's no need, because everyone's shared everything with the group, there's no need for taking artificial stimulants to solve a problem.
Yeah.
So in other words, all your problems have now been laid out, and anything can be injected into the group. So it's quite clever, actually, but it's a bit creepy as well.
It's very creepy.
Right, yes, very creepy, actually.
In my
yes.
opinion.
In my opinion, too. Creating the drones of the future of Brave New World, updated, basically, to remove previous faulty mechanisms and behaviour. You see what I'm getting at here? So what they're doing is they're ironing out personalities.
Yeah.
Yeah. And personalities are actually where you get the interesting, quirky things going on, which is, again, tying into the way society is being re-engineered. Go through London now. Most of the interesting shops and little businesses that used to be there have gone. That's the individual aspect. What you've got now is a hive mind, but it's a corporate hive mind. So I suppose if you need people to be part of the corporate hive mind, this would be the way to do it, wouldn't it, really?
Yeah, there's no individual thinking, really, and that's what makes people people. It's what makes creativity. It's what makes artists, writers, people that actually enjoy being solitary and working out their stuff in their head and writing it down. You're not going to get this with this kind of programming.
No, because there's no insight.
No insight whatsoever.
So the pharmacological concentration camp predicted where the drones would come to love their servitude is what this is about. The state now has complete control and the use of these hive-minded pawns for, again, the common good. So, let's have a look at this one now. This is the third day, or the third course, Be the Change, the hero's journey, the 5-day course.
So fed up with that change, aren't you?
The change.
Be the change. Change to what?
Yeah, have some
They
change.
never tell you.
Have some change, it's 20p, get lost. Yeah, the 5-day hero's journey offers students and schools the best chance of sustaining the amazing and much coveted impact of our Who Am I and Heroes training programs. Providing all the benefits from the 3-day Heroes training, we build in an extra 2 visits from our highly motivated HU team. This allows us to work more closely with year groups so we can explore the messages highlighted from the first few days in more detail, giving students the opportunity to reflect on the issues addressed and the positive changes inspired. Now, what happens here at this point, is the video for this part of the training, which appears to be the sort of final part, really. It shows a boy whose life has been captured on a series of snapshots on a cinema screen. And it's all about his memorable days and what he's achieved or what is perceived to be achieved by him. Basically, it then cuts to him in detention. He goes up these stairs and he goes in this room on his own. So obviously, it's not good to be on your own.
It's not good to be on your own.
It's not good to be on your own. You're out with the group now.
Yeah.
You're out with the group. You've been ostracised. You're on your own. Okay? Yeah. So he's in detention, looking defeated, and he writes in big letters on the desk, "Who am I?" And then it cuts to a caption which says, "The Dreamer." He then has a daydream of being on a beach, and a series of captions appear, such as, "What if I told you that who you are now is a product of everything that has happened to you?" It is then that the change mantra appears again. So you can be the change, you can change this, you can change that. You were born an original, why die a copy? Which is rather ironic, isn't it? Because
it's the other way round.
Well, in actual fact, in a way it's right, because they're not copying anything, because they're a hive. Yeah. They're not even thinking about that. So in a way, they wouldn't be copying each other. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
So
I get what you're saying.
the imitation is often a way of, like, when you're younger, you can imitate people and something else can come out of it. In other words, you go, oh, I aspire to that and I aspire to that. And out of those two aspirations, a third thing would come along, right?
Yeah.
Which would be a synthesis into something else. That's what I'm sort of getting at here.
Yeah.
I think that's a really interesting point, that. Yeah, it ends with "I am the change" written on the desk, right? So I am the change. But what is the change? Not I have changed myself. Yeah. I am the change.
It's the change for the greater good, or the community, or whatever they want to call it, really. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's not about individual change.
Yeah. I mean, it's very interesting looking at this stuff, but it all goes in the same direction. And what I can't understand about it is what I bring up in my talks. Once you see this template, and it is a template, and I've been studying it from local to global government for a long time, and I've put it down as to what it is: trained facilitators, change agents, be the change, and all this mentoring into basically this mediocre hive mind of administration. And at the end of it, what it is actually is a totalitarian form of administration, because you're not allowed to be outside it. So what it's all about is creating a mass hive mind and nothing else, really. So this was all predicted in these social engineering doctrines like Brave New World and, of course, 1984 to a certain extent. But what this is the next stage on from that. So in other words, the social engineering has taken on this idea into this new utopia, which is where we are now. And it is actually a thing we talk about, the lostness of the mind, this passive acceptance. And passive acceptance is another thing we talk about a lot, because that was brought into the United Nations through these manufactured Hindu type groups and New Age groups. And this is another part of it. So to me, this is just another part of that hive mind. In other words, it's a system of moods. But what this seems to do is remove all moods from a system of moods, which is a kind of, it's a step up in a way, isn't it? So if you've got a system of moods where you need something for everybody, so they're all going to be part of their individual little bits, right? If you take all the individuality away, then there's no need for groups anymore.
Well, what I thought was interesting is that all through these three programs that go from, from who am I, right, to be the change. When you go on to be the change, it's not about empowering yourself to maybe go on to higher education or whatever. It's actually to become a facilitator. So it's almost like cookie cuttering the whole thing. It's a very contained. I found it quite cultish, actually. It's almost a contained way of educating more facilitators and creating jobs within that framework.
That's exactly it.
Yeah.
This is the rollout of NGOs. This is the new global governance, which was talked about from 1980s onwards in documents like Our Common Future, which we talk about in the bigger picture, which was a document which was the precursor to where we are now, in the respect that it was the United Nations would be the super agency, and there would be banks and NGOs under that, all run under the World Bank and the IMF. So this is basically a top-down strategy, which is actually advertising itself as a roots-based ground-up thing, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's what's quite clever about it, because it's actually a real totalitarian corporate control of everything, but done as the common good. In other words, it's a new form of this communitarian idea. So I think it's quite interesting the way they're actually rolling it out, but very, very predictable. Again, it's actually so template orientated that it's blindingly obvious if you've got any grasp of what's going on. And if you haven't got any grasp of what's going on, you would question it anyway. So my question, I suppose, is why have 300,000 drones been trained through this system and nobody's talking about it? I've never heard anyone mention it.
300,000 have been trained in this program. It's absolutely unbelievable. And what also I feel is that the conditions for this to actually happen have been engineered also, where we've had a dumbing down and an infrastructure taken away from the education system. So you've got children that don't have hope, that don't have, who are disempowered in some way, because maybe things at home aren't good. There's austerity. There's all the breeding ground for this particular program has been put in place. And that's the worst thing, is that these children have, that what they're then told in this mentoring scheme is, we're going to give you hope. We're going to make you a hero. We're going to do this. We're going to do that for you. And that's what they're believing. And that is the saddest, most awful thing, because actually it's the opposite. They're being disempowered.
I've just been looking in chat here, and someone's put a link to the European Confederation of Youth Clubs. And the headline on the website is Multicultural Learning, Non-Formal Learning. Again, it sounds like very much the same thing.
Yeah.
Open youth work, it's all group work. And it says, are you awesome? We're hiring. Basically, the European Confederation of Youth Clubs is hiring a project and membership officer. It's basically active citizens living European values. Training course on how to efficiently advocate for youth work using the 2017 Committee of Ministers recommendations, blah, 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 blah. Well, that's another way of bringing things together. But I think this is more creepy, actually, because that on the face of it, it says it's youth clubs, which actually indicates that it's got some kind of individual membership to it. Whereas
and
this
choice of joining
is just like everyone becoming one hive. And if you look at the holding of the hands thing, they keep cutting to this holding of the hands. And them playing these sort of games. And basically they're all set out as though they're already in tables with facilitators on them.
Yeah. When you look at what they're doing, it actually looks a bit like a citizens' assembly, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
It really does.
If you go to the Involve website or Sortition and have a look, and go to our previous shows on citizens' assemblies and look at what facilitated meetings look like, where the outcome is entirely predicted and you're steered into it, this is the same thing for school children. So they're getting them into that form of non-governance so that by the time they leave school, this will be the norm. In other words, there'll probably be facilitated meetings at the family table.
Yeah.
So when the parents or the state have a new imposition, they'll tell the parents or the chosen facilitator within the family how to steer the rest of the family into the intended outcome.
Yeah, I mean, that's the worst thing. It's taking all the power away from the family, which is what's intended. The parents, the state will be gaining more control over their children's thoughts and actions and everything else about that child, rather than the parents. And that really is a Soviet model, isn't it?
Yeah. Eric von Essex has just put in chat, the word community is excessively used nowadays. That word was hardly ever used up until the Berlin Wall came down and communism moved from east to west. Well, quite a good point. I mean, it's become overused, hasn't it? It's become an overused term. You didn't used to hear it that much, really.
No, you didn't. No.
So that's a very good point, Eric.
Yeah, very good point. Shall I talk about the other thing?
Yes, we're going to get on to the very young now, which is what's going on for the pre-secondary schools. These are infant schools, really, aren't they?
Even nurseries. I mean,
nurseries,
I was quite horrified about this because... it's something that cropped up in Bristol at the Arnold Feeney Art Gallery in Bristol. Now we're going to talk about drag queen story time, and apparently a magical morning full of fantastic stories and fabulous tales inspired by Fluffy Library with drag queen story times pom pom. Now this is about drag queens coming into libraries reading children's stories about, well, I'll tell you. It says, Drag Queen Storytime is exactly what it sounds. Drag queens read stories to children, capturing the imagination and fun of the gender fluidity of childhood, while giving children glamorous, positive and unabashedly queer role models by providing spaces in which children are able to see people who defy rigid gender restrictions. Now, it's interesting. They've actually turned it into a bit like the LGBTQ. They call them DGTST, which is Drag Queen Storytime, allows them to imagine the world in which people can present as they wish. Now, there's also another thing that apparently a Bristol primary school, it's Parson Street Primary School, parents complained about drag queens being invited into the school for storytelling to promote World Book Day. The same company, DQST, speaking to the Bristol Post as a number of parents expressed concerns about the drag queens as they were adult entertainers. Quite rightly, they are adult. Is this age appropriate to have drag queens, adult entertainers, coming into schools teaching children about about these issues that really at that age, between 4 and 11, are they actually, should they be worried about this, and should they be having these adult entertainers coming in? In my opinion, no. And people would vilify me for saying that, but that is my opinion.
No, it's creepy, it's disturbing, and it's degenerate.
Yeah, absolutely. Apparently, DQST have been teaching LGBTQ tolerance over a crowdfunding campaign. It's run by a chap called Tom Canham. He's 25, and he crowdfunded enough money to buy books and perform in nurseries in London. Now we're talking nurseries. This is children from 2 to
Well, what sort of
4.
person gives money to something like that anyway?
It's outrageous. I mean, anyway, a team of 6 drag queens have since performed to over 2,000 children during the past 8 months, including those who attended the performances in Bristol libraries over the summer. Speaking about their project last year, 25-year-old Mr. Canham said, "For me, the project is about drag queens providing fun and inclusive reading for children about issues around misogyny, homophobia, racism, LGBTQ and gender fluidity in a way that they can understand."
Right, well, what this is the hijacking of the narrative, you see.
Yeah.
So in other words, it's about the drag queen bringing their agenda to children.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so
Absolutely.
it's not educational, is it?
No.
Why is it
and
educational?
there's why aren't teachers doing story time? I'm sorry. Why don't the libraries provide story time? Do we need drag queens to do this? No, we don't. And drag queens, there's a place for drag queens. It's on TV, RuPaul's Drag Racing or whatever they have. There's a place for it, and it's in entertainment. It's not in children's story time. I'm sorry, it's just not. That's the way I feel about it anyway. Their argument is that racism, homophobia, misogyny and the like are learned behaviours that weren't, that this hatred is taught over time. However, many of the Bedminster parents, that's an area of Bristol, are in disagreement. The headmaster is apparently non-negotiable on this and says that if you don't like it, you should take your children out of school with an unauthorised absence, which then goes against their absence record, which is, ridiculous, really.
That's a double-edged sword to do that. I mean, that's like saying, OK, well, if you protest against us imposing parking restrictions, we won't give you a permit.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is exactly what they did in East London, actually.
Yeah.
But, this is the intolerance, you see. So, in other words, it's meant to be all about tolerance, but it's actually totally intolerant once you disagree with it.
Yeah.
So, in other words, it's exactly the opposite of what they're trying to present it as. So it's hypocritical. Yeah. Now, the other thing is that no population can be ideologically subverted or degenerated if they do not accept it. So if you accept it, then you agree with it. It's very simple. Nobody imposes anything on anybody without the chance for you to rebut any assumption that comes your way.
Yeah.
So if this is being carried out, then it's all down to you. You've accepted it. If you accept anything conditionally or unconditionally, then that means that you agree with it. So if you agree with it, then you don't say anything. But if you don't agree with it, say something. Very simple.
You've got to, I think people are scared of speaking up, because they're seen as being, homophobic or transphobic or whatever. No, you're not. You're entitled to your opinion on this. And if you don't want your child subjected to it, then you have the right to say so and speak out. I mean, it's outrageous. I mean, one of the parents said, one of the drag queens refers to herself as Bristol's resident slag. Now, these children are between 4 and 11 years old. They don't need to be exposed to that. And I totally agree.
Well, exactly, because what you're saying about them being adult entertainers is very true, because the environment of that kind of entertainment, I used to work in it, pubs and clubs, right? It's for people who get drunk who are having a laugh. Yeah. That's really what it's about. And what it's been portrayed as now is some kind of virtue signalling identitarian thing, which it's not really. And what you have here is a non-group Because what we're talking about, drag queens aren't a social group.
No,
they never
no,
have been.
they never have been.
The whole attraction of it was that they were kind of outside society. You see, that's why you had these comedians like Lily Savage, because they're meant to have this external viewpoint, right? Now, the point is that's the only role that they really played within society, was to basically reflect back at society their marginalisation.
Yeah.
Right? That's the only way a drag queen works, really. Because I've worked with loads of them.
Yeah, I have too.
Yeah.
I mean, I worked in theatre all my life, actually, until 2009. And, you know, there is a place for drag queens, and it's not in schools and it's not in nurseries, I'm sorry. And, you know, one of the parents quite rightly said that the children themselves aren't, you know, they're not ready to cope with this, and there's plenty of books around the schools on subjects like sexuality should they want to look at them, but to have it forced on them is a different story.
Well, it's all about choice at the end of the day, and Britain's been subverted and taken over. This is a new form of governance that the public have actually accepted. They may not have realised that they've accepted it, but we bring this up all the time. So if it's reported on our show, then it's in the public domain. So in other words, none of this is secret. Nobody's trying to keep this away from you. All that you have to do is look, and you'll see the template. The template's really obvious. Some people describe it as cultural Marxism. Can be a bit of a mistake to go down that route, because what you're doing then is leaving yourself open for criticism from the same groups you're trying to criticise, right? So you have to go at it from an outside area and say, no, wait a minute, this is what it is. What we're looking at here is a template, a social engineering template, which is to achieve a certain aim. So what's the aim of this? It's not to break down barriers, is it? It's not to break down kind of adult themes in the respect that why would you see? The thing is,
it's normalisation. It's to normalise.
Well, also, if you're 4 and 5 years old, I mean, if you see a man in makeup and you know it's a man, it causes a cognitive dissonance within the person.
Yes, exactly.
It causes a shock, basically, right?
Yeah.
Now, this is something that's hardly ever addressed, but even when I was in a dressing room with a drag queen and they're strapping themselves up and trying to hide the privates and squeezing themselves into dresses, it's not a comfortable thing to watch, right?
It's not.
But the point is that when you get...
But that's fine when you're an adult.
Yeah, and it's quite, it's
quite
kind
amusing,
of banter and amusing in some respects. But when you're putting this into children, it's when you're at a formative age,
it screws them up.
Yes, it's causing a dissonance within the brain, which I think is the whole idea of it.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
No, I think it is. It's to screw our children up. And quite honestly, I mean, I've had children, they're grown up now, and I've got 2 grandchildren. And if I had children right now, I would be wanting to homeschool them. But the thing is, how many parents can afford to be able to do that time-wise? Because most parents are at work. And it would be a huge sacrifice to homeschool. But, you know, there really has to be a move away from this. And I don't know what the solution is. But all I know is that I would not want my children under these kind of regimes that they're enforcing.
So there you go, everybody. It's all up to you. And we've given you a bit of an insight there into what's going on. So look up Human Utopia, and see if it's at a school near you. It should be. They've trained 300,000 of them so far. And according to them, it's a big success story. If you've got any insight into that and have heard of people who've had a problem with this or have had any trouble with this kind of mentoring program, do get in touch and we'll look into it, because we are at the forefront of uncovering what is behind the door of the social engineering. And that's about it from this week. Shorter show this week. Wasn't going to do one actually, because I was going to do one tomorrow night. But next week I've got a special, and it's all about a new documentary project that I've been working on. You can go to Patreon and find out about it. There's some information on there, and I'll be releasing more info on that next week. And it's something that will be exclusive to Windows on the World listeners and viewers. And we'll be putting out a lot more stuff on Patreon and through the website. So that's it Until next week, see you at the same time on Sunday on windowsontheworld.net.
Join me, Mark Windows, for Windows on the World live every Sunday 9 to 11 p.m. GMT. Check out our archive and programme stream at windowsontheworld.net.